This is AFN.
A man who took revenge for the beating of Rodney King gets the maximum sentence allowed.
Violation.
Shuttle diplomacy proves little match for bullets and rage in the Middle East. And the crew of the shuttle Endeavour extends its streak of picture-perfect spacewalks. Headline News, I'm Charles Zewe, in today for Chuck Roberts. Damian Williams wielded the brick that smashed the head of truck driver Reginald Denny at the start of last year's riots in South Central Los Angeles. For that crime and for attacks on 4 other people, he was sentenced today to 10 years in prison, the most the law allows. He'll spend no more than 8 years behind bars because of time already served and could be eligible for parole in about 3 years. Judge John Ouderkirk harshly rebuffed defense requests for probation.
The crimes for which the defendant stands convicted involve multiple victims on separate incidents. The defendant's belated statement of remorse after conviction does not ring true in light of his spitting on the near-dead victim and his victory dance after the attack.
Ouderkirk sentenced Williams' co-defendant Henry Watson to 3 years probation before sentencing Williams. He again played the videotapes on which prosecutors had based much of their cases. The prime suspect in the kidnapping and murder of 12-year-old Polly Klaas is scheduled to be arraigned later in the day today. A public defender for Richard Allen Davis reportedly says his client has expressed remorse and cannot remember details of what happened the night of the abduction because he was high on alcohol and drugs. The report appears in the Santa Rosa, California Press-Democrat today. Davis allegedly kidnapped Polly from her home in Petaluma during an October 1st slumber party. Her body was found Saturday. The U.S. government is admitting now it concealed 204 nuclear weapons tests. The Energy Department today said the tests date back to the 1940s and include some in which radiation was released into the atmosphere. The explosions were never revealed to the public because the government didn't want to disclose that information to the then Soviet Union. The tests were conducted at an underground test site in Nevada. Before today, the government had announced more than 800 nuclear tests since 1945. Defense Secretary Les Aspin is warning the U.S. is not sufficiently prepared for what he calls the new nuclear danger. So the Pentagon is launching a program to prepare U.S. forces for enemies who possess nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons. Aspin says the program will specifically target terrorists and rogue states like Iraq and could apply to North Korea in the future. President Clinton and South Korean President Kim Jong-sam discussed North Korea's latest proposal on nuclear inspections today. The White House saying that both leaders agreed that North Korea's offer remains inadequate. The U.S. and South Korea say the North must agree to unlimited international inspections of its nuclear power sites. They say it must also agree to resume talks with South Korea on making the Korean peninsula free of nuclear weapons. For the second time in a week, North Korea handed over what are the remains of American soldiers killed during the Korean War. The U.S. and North Korea have no formal ties, but the return of 31 sets of remains is seen as a gesture toward peace. The remains will be sent to Hawaii now for the difficult task of identification. North Korean officials indicate they may hand over more remains before Christmas. December 7th, as former President Franklin Roosevelt says, is living in infamy. 52 years ago, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, drawing the United States into World War II. In Washington, Secretary of Veterans Affairs Jesse Brown placed a wreath at the foot of the lone sailor statue. 6 men who served the attack attended that somber ceremony today. In New York, meanwhile, veterans and survivors gathered at the Intrepid Sea and Air Museum for another remembrance ceremony. Recent violence in the Israeli-occupied territories is hurting the Middle East peace process. Secretary of State Warren Christopher is in the region this week trying to get things back on track, as Ralph Begleiter reports.
Israel is consumed by the mourning and flames of Arab-Israeli violence this week. Mourning the killing of Jews by Palestinians in the West Bank. Islamic Palestinians wrapped in their flag promising more deaths to avenge the killing of a Hamas activist by Israeli soldiers in Gaza. Israelis ravaging Arab villages around their settlements, setting fires to block roads, destroying a Palestinian gas station, stoning Arab cars. Both sides protesting Israel's agreement giving the Palestinians self-government in the occupation.